How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to the Fantasy Assessment. We've been gone for far too long. Technical difficulties may have foiled our attempt to come back to your screens last week, but we're here finally. This is week 3 trends, streamers, and bets. I'm, of course, joined by my two lovely co-hosts, Jerry Wilkie and Chu Russell. Chu, how you doing today, my man?
Doing great. Bryce is benched. Andy Dalton is under center. He's 36 and he's ready to rock. So I'm having a great time over here.
Huge news. I want to stay on that. Take me through your reaction as a Panthers fan. I guess the camera splice is kind of cutting out that jersey in the background. But for all of you that don't know, Chu is a Panthers fan. Just take me through your emotions this week.
So I assumed at some point that probably would happen. Because I mean, with how terrible Bryce has looked, the big thing the Panthers have had, a top 15 O-line thus far, throughout the season. So I understand we're only 2 games in, but he has looked like absolute dog shit. And a lot of it seemingly being like, he doesn't look confident. He just doesn't look, not like he doesn't know what he's doing, but it just seems like it's just so awry. And you could say that's, we don't know what much of that is coaching and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't seem like it's the weapons fault fully. It's not the O-line's fault fully. Coaching wise, we've seen him work in a couple different schemes. Only 1 year as offensive coordinator for Dave Canales. So I think a lot of it does have to do with Bryce. He could right the ship. We've seen a number of Panthers quarterbacks move on to different teams and do pretty well. We're watching that right now. So I do think he can eventually turn it around, but I don't think it's going to be in Carolina.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, quite a shock just from an instant reaction kind of take that, like, hey, this was the number 1 overall pick that you sent an absolute haul for, and to make that decision after 2 games immediately seemed just like a bonkers decision, just throwing all this work away. But yeah, as you kind of dig into it, as you broke down there, it does start to make a little bit more sense. We'll get into great topics like that on our show today. But first, quick hi to Jerry. How you doing today?
What's going on? Excited to be back. We're going into week 3. Got my Bills going on Monday night. Got the extra day off because since they played last Thursday, it was fun. Nice, knock 2 out for a few games. That's not always fun, but at least it opens up the division a little bit more. But yeah.
I mean, Bills looking fantastic, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which some people, myself, without too much in-depth knowledge, kind of heard the surface level that Bills D's want to be targeted for an offensive matchup, and it's been absolutely the opposite so far. But yeah, this is the Fantasy Assessment. We're back. Well, we're back to the first time as a weekly show. Will usually be on Friday nights at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We are in fact taking the great Jeff Lambert slot tonight on Wednesday night. Jeff is feeling a little under the weather. Hope you feel better soon, Jeff. Hopefully this show helps you cheer up a little bit. But Fantasy Assessment, now a weekly show. Our 3 hosts here each have a segment that they're prepared week on week. That's trends for me, streamers for Chu, and bets for Jerry. Should be a whole lot of fun. But before that, let's get into Choose Your Fighter. This was completely an impromptu or maybe a legacy segment from the past, but came up with this as we were going live. But I'm going to tweak what we talked about before. In general, I'm talking Dynasty. What quarterback has seen their value change the most since the start of the season? I mean, Bryce is a gimme, so we can skip him. But let me turn it over to you, Chu, first. What quarterback has had their Dynasty value change the most, up or down, in the first 2 weeks of the season?
I think if we're looking a rookie specific, I'm going to lean towards maybe not quite the easiest one. I'm going to say Michael Penix, someone who hasn't actually done anything yet. But the pro and the con of that is he hasn't done anything to depress his value. And it's really just dependent upon, unless Kirk comes out and becomes, top 5, top 10 quarterback, then everyone's just going to be kind of yearning and waiting for, hey, once it's Michael Penix, can this offense really be unlocked? A pretty shaky week 1. I think there's a lot of concern with Kirk not doing much under center really at all. Yeah. And overall, mistake prone. I think 2 interceptions, I want to say, in that first game. Turned it back around a little bit in that second week. And of course, the offense very much flows through Bijan, honestly, as it should. But I think the entirety of this season, unless Kirk really really kind of gets a grasp on this offense and really unlocks it the way he has had in Minnesota and such, I think there's going to be a lot of just kind of people waiting in the back of their heads like, all right, is it after this season Penix comes in? Does he get one more? So I don't expect Penix to step in this season, but I think people are going to be yearning for that at a certain point with all these weapons they have in Atlanta.
They're really yearning for that Penix, aren't they, Chew?
Oh, yeah.
No,
Real deep.
I mean, Penix. The first question we decided before we went on the air was specific to rookie quarterbacks, and I decided to expand it a little bit on the fly. But Penix is almost like the inaction has seen the biggest boost to his value because we've seen how bad Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels to a certain extent, fantasy is a little bit different for him. But I completely agree with you there. What about you, Jerry? Dynasty quarterback that has had their dynasty value changed the most since the start of the season?
I'll go from one rookie that hasn't seen the field yet to another, and that's Drake May. He, if you followed the show along, he was my quarterback one from this rookie class. His time is coming, but with the way that not even necessarily Jacoby Brissett's playing, just the way that the Patriots are playing in general, they're staying afloat. They're 1-1. They beat the Bengals week 1. They went to overtime with Seattle week 2, and like it's just his time just keeps on getting pushed back. So as far as like in a dynasty league, you can probably go out and send a mid-round pick or a mid-round pick and a player to get him and still stash him yourself, because eventually he's going to be taken over, and it might be after their bye this week. He might redshirt this year and not take over till next year, depending on how the Patriots are doing. But Jacoby's not the future. It's going to be Drake May. People also were on the Joe Milton train, especially after that preseason week 1 game. Everybody wanted him to start, but no, this is Drake May's team. They're just putting it together. They got a good coach there, and so far so good. They're staying competitive. They're tied for second in the division, and we'll see what happens when May takes over.
Yeah, I love that answer. And maybe that's a bit leading into the preseason too, where we really saw a lot of great things out of Drake May. And I love the idea of trading for him in a dynasty league. If you can, in your leagues, if you can kind of spot that he's on maybe a contending roster, a lot of, established quarterbacks have had down weeks to start the year. Can you make a little bit of a play there? I love the idea of getting Drake May on your roster before he actually takes the field. Maybe taking out rookie from the question was more for my benefit because now coming to me third, a little bit more tricky by we limited rookies. But I'm going to go with Baker Mayfield. Give this man his flowers. And I really just want to make comparisons. So some of the quarterbacks that were going like way higher than Baker in like the keep trade cut standings and like startup value. You think of like from Dak Prescott all the way to like Jared Goff, who like peaked inside the top 50. Baker Mayfield put all of that in terms of fantasy value, in the books last year, and we've just started to see a whole new side of his game now, even without like that Dave Canales aspect. He's really on fraud watch after these first 2 weeks, but he keeps putting it together. It seems like the team is really bought in. There's just like a lot to love about the story, and I think maybe his dynasty value has caught up to where I really think it should be, but honestly, it's almost in like the late first territory for Baker Mayfield, which is kind of a bold claim to make. But if I feel completely fine tossing him in on a contender and like hoping he, mans that QB2 spot for me for 2 to 3 years now, just with what we've shown from him. Like the Mike Evans future is a question, but Chris Godwin is the wide receiver 1 right now. Jalen McMillan has looked great in his limited action. I just think Baker Mayfield is going to prove a lot of value in Dynasty Superflex leagues. So that's my candidate for Choose Your Fighter. The question, of course, is which quarterback has had their Dynasty value change the most the first few weeks of the season. So let's get on to the show. Quick hi to Bing King and Albert in the comments section. How you doing, guys? Thanks for joining us. The first segment is mine. Thank you. That is 3 up, 3 down. I'm giving my candidates for trending up and trending down players after the week 2's action heading into the rest of the season, starting with really one of my favorite players in the NFL, and that's Nico Collins. He's currently the half PPR wide receiver 2. He's averaging 9 targets a game and 125 receiving yards per game. That's very nice, Jared. Michigan rookie, Michigan trading card of Nico Collins. You've come a very long way from that point, and it really seemed like this was Nico Collins' week on Twitter. He, of course, had the primetime blow-up performance, but you're seeing a lot of people like being like, yeah, this is not just a top 10. He's potentially a top 5 wide receiver in the league. People saying he's like an elite just player across all positions. Just fantastic. You have to be ecstatic as an owner, redraft or dynasty. Chu, tell me your thoughts on Nico Collins, how he started, and kind of where would you rank him rest of season in a redraft perspective, but rest of season moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, from a redraft perspective, I mean, he's comfortably top 10. It's just where you're going to put him. And I think with what he's done thus far, and I know there's Diggs, I know there's Dell, but at this point, I think we can comfortably say Dell is not, going to eat in too much of what either of them do.
Mm-hmm.
And between the two, between Diggs and Collins, Diggs is going to have his weeks, especially the touchdown upside that we saw in week 1, of course. But overall, it is Nico Collins's target share to be had. There was already that connection there that had been established with CJ Stroud. Nico Collins finally unlocked. I know he's a pretty talented guy coming out of Michigan, but he's an interesting tale of seeing a talented receiver that can finally become unlocked years into his career by the right quarterback and the right offense and everything like that. So everything's aligning for him. Without putting a specific number on it, if I'm going to throw a range, I'm comfortable throwing him in the wide receiver 4 to 6 territory.
Mm-hmm.
I am a little leery in terms of capping the upside with Diggs being there, taking away some of those touchdowns. But overall, I mean, I'm comfortable with his role in this offense and the high octane level of this offense.
Yeah, I think wide receiver 5 is where I'd put him to split that range right there. Jerry, what about from a dynasty point of view? Nico Collins, where has he shot up to? Does he deserve to be, right below that like Jefferson, Lamb, Chase tier, Amon-Ra? Does he deserve slotting right there, or you saw a little bit of a hesitation putting him that high?
No, I put him that high. I got him probably around like 5, 6. He just signed a contract extension, I believe, this past summer. He's tied to CJ Stroud for however many years now. They have that connection. I believe I think he leads the league in targets right now. I mean, it's only 2 weeks, but I think he leads the league in targets. He leads the league in yards. He had that monstrous touchdown on Sunday night that was just bowled over Jalen Johnson in the end zone. That was pretty funny. But yeah, he's overall, I would put him. He's young enough to be up there. I mean, I'd probably put him above like your Hills and your Adams in Dynasty too with his age. And yeah, as far as like this week in redraft goes, he is dealing with a little bit of an injury. I believe he missed practice today with his hip, but he's questionable for at least this week for week 3 of the season. But overall, for long term, I definitely love him, and he was one of my favorite players coming out of college. Obviously, I got the card here, and I try to get him on almost every team that I could this year.
Yeah, I completely agree with what both of you have said there on Nico. Definitely trending up, heading into week 3. Moving on to my next player, and this is the guy of week 2. That's Alvin Kamara, who had 43 half PPR points in week 2. Following up what was, a measly RB6 on the week performance in week 1. He's definitely getting it done for owners right now. I think what's really for me to like about Kamara is getting run game volume. He handled 15 and then 20 touches in back-to-back weeks. And you have to consider these are 2 massive blowouts where Jamal Williams was getting a lot of the relief work as well. He's also getting those goal line looks, which kind of went away from him in the past few years. And then that swell of Taysom Hill, whatever you want to call it. Definitely have to be a worry for people who drafted him, mainly on the fact that he is just this PPR scammer, right? He just racks up those sweet receptions, and he hasn't even been getting it done that way. Just, great to see from Kamara, someone who I don't have in too many leagues, unfortunately. And I think the last point that gives me confidence that this isn't just a flash in the pan. He's not going to get 43 points week on week, but it's just that the Saints offense looks much better than anyone could have expected under Clint Kubiak. I've heard the underdog guys kind of describe Kubiak as like the 2024 version of Bobby Slowick for the Texans last year, in just a very similar way of how they get, use 12 personnel, get, that protection right, and then you have your 2 speedsters just run deep routes over the middle of the field. Rashid Shaheed has really been eaten so far. Chris Olave hasn't got there yet, but he had a reception down right on the one. You sense that big game is right around the corner. And this is from someone who really faded Chris Olave heading into the year. Let me go to you, Chu. Alvin Kamara. I guess I'm going to ask you the same kind of question. Like, where would you rank him rest of season from a redraft perspective?
I mean, I was all in on him coming into this season. I had him in a couple of dynasty leagues as well, just because guys like he and Tony Pollard, age a little bit, and it just kind of the value being suppressed, but being guys that can still produce at a pretty high level. Thankfully, that has been confirmed this season. But yeah, I mean, for Kamara, I'm comfortable with the volume that he's getting overall. I think that's what everyone expected him to get at a minimum. But with how well the offense has been doing as a whole, again, like you said, 4 touchdown games don't come around very often, although they do seem to come around every year for him and Joe Mixon. But overall, he's getting in more positions to be able to score. He could have been on just a floundering Saints offense that it was mostly just going to be in field goal range, but they're actually getting a chance to score touchdowns. And like you said, getting that red zone usage and everything is tremendous for him. He's another one. We're talking about Nico Collins in the 4 to 6 range for wide receiver. I mean, I do expect the Saints offense to slow down a bit at some point. But overall, I like what they're doing a lot. It is night and day difference from what it's looked like the last couple of years, to be honest. And if he's having this touchdown upside, being in a better scoring position, then I'd put him in the maybe top 3 to 5, I would say, for running back wise.
Yeah.
Especially
and
PPR.
Especially in PPR. And that's the thing. Even if it kind of flips on the Saints, obviously it's not going to be blowouts all the time. Get close games. They might be behind in a lot of the games that come. And that's still where Kamara is going to get his work. Feel very strong about him. Definitely trending up heading into week 3. Last guy trending up on this list. And of course, there are a lot of honorable mentions, some, linked to this offense I'm going to cover, but that's Kyler Murray. Really, just a fantastic game in week 2. I you guys know I love Kyler Murray. He had a perfect quarterback rating of 158.3. I don't know why it's oddly specific, but that's what he put up in week 2. Got it done through the air, which maybe was the one like chink in the armor, like heading into the year, is can he put up the numbers that Josh Allen, Prescott, the Burrow, Strauss, can he match those numbers? Probably leaned on no, and we saw him do it in week 2, and especially through that connection to Marvin Harrison Jr. Just those 2 long touchdowns. But even taking those aside, he had 2 hot route targets. Harrison just ran a fade in the end zone. He just went right to him. Connection wasn't there. He missed on both of those, but the potential for that to grow from here is just makes me so excited about Kyler Murray. And to add to that, really where we started with is his rushing upside. He's averaged over 50 rush yards a game so far this season. In what has really been one of the best run games in the NFL, I have to say, the Cardinals under Drew Petzing. James Conner looks revived. Like I said, a lot of honorable mentions could go to this offense. I mean, tell me about Kyler Murray, Jerry. How are you feeling about him rest of season? And even from a dynasty point of view, is he does he push that first round startup value at this point for you?
Yeah, I mean, in a super flex for sure. Definitely, I would be looking at him there. And as far as the rest of the season goes, too, I think I may have mentioned it on an episode or 2, but I felt like he could be QB1 or around top 3 QB. I know you guys were on Hurts, or at least you were on Hurts, Rahul. Obviously, Allen is always a threat too to be up there. But if we were not necessarily dark horsing it because he has shown the potential, but if it wasn't Allen or it wasn't Lamar, I think it could be Kyler Murray. And so far, so good. I mean, he's off to a good start. He's only going to grow and get better with guys like Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison. And so he's pretty much an every week start for as long as he's healthy for the rest of this year and going into a startup dynasty. If you're a startup dynasty in the offseason, super flex, I mean, I would definitely be considering him after your Allen and your Strouds and stuff, but towards the end of the first round, maybe at the turn.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And that is the ceiling. That is what he could reach. But if we just think back to two weeks ago, dynasty startups, redraft drafts, he's going well after a lot of those guys. He was going even after the Stroud and Burrow. I mean, maybe around Dak kind of tier. it's really great to see this kind of performance from him. I think he must have. Was he QB1 on the week? I'll have to double check that. But regardless, Kyler Murray trending up. Let's go quickly on to the 3 down from this week. And like I did last week in our unaired, never to be seen episode, I'm going to cheat a little bit on this one. You got to start with the major injuries. Just, I think it's almost like the Black Monday of injuries this past Monday, which is like the like, I guess the capital invested into the players and the length of injuries. It's not like these guys are just going to miss a week or 2 weeks. We had multiple players, threatening IR in the chase of Isaiah Pacheco, CMC, like AJ Brown, Kenneth Walker, multi-week injuries, Puka on IR, like Jordan Love probably will be another week or so. The tight ends, just, I don't know. There's a lot to cover too. I want to come to you. Like, you can go at which injury is the most impactful. They're all impactful. Maybe one that might be a little more useful. It's like advice on like how you would get through this situation. And if it's like time to cut bait, you're 1-1, but like 0-2 teams, if you can sense some weakness, like what is like the level of like trades you're willing to go to? Like trade away a CMC for this XYZ player who's playing now. Like how do you get through these kind of like crises?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of impact, like you said, I mean, these are all key players in their respective offenses. And I'm going to kind of cheat on this answer because Rams wide receivers are lumped in together. So I'm just going to have to go with X. It's 2 people. But also just thinking about the impact and the target share of going into last season when it was Puka coming out and just the unreasonable number of targets he was getting early in the season. And then that balanced back a little bit once Cooper Kupp came back in. Then, of course, watching Cooper Kupp in the first week of this season, Puka being out, obviously, as we just mentioned. But it's going to be really interesting. I know that Sean McVay is a tremendous offensive mind. They have a decent wide receiver depth there. They have Colby Parkinson, the tight end god, obviously.
There we go.
And Kyron Williams in the backfield. So, I mean, they have some pieces to work with, of course, but when you're stepping down from Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua to Demarcus Robinson, Jordan Whittington, Tyler Johnson, those kinds of guys, Tutu Atwell, of course, but I think it's going to be kind of at best, death by 1,000 cuts in terms of you don't know who's going to be the one that week.
Mm-hmm.
They're just going to do what they can. And of course, on the arm of Matthew Stafford, who he's not done yet, but I know he's taken a beating throughout his career. And at the age of, I want to say 35, 36, I think he had redone his contract that this becomes a prove it year, which sucks that he just lost his 2 best receivers. So that one seems to really, in terms of stars aligning, this would be stars being destroyed, the opposite of that there. And in terms of trades, it's interesting because you mentioned CMC. I think his was 6 weeks. They were estimating he'd be out. So he's on the IR, but that's 4 weeks and 6 weeks, of course. I think their bye week, I want to say, is 9. So they're basically saying it'll be into the bye week and he'll be fresh after. I mean, I don't know if it suppresses his value a little bit that Jordan Mason steps in. And of course, anyone that puts on a San Fran jersey and plays running back can just kind of figure it out in that offense. Mm-hmm. But I do think that if you're a believer in CMC, this could be a good time to go get him. Because again, he did just re-up his contract. He's not going anywhere. And while I do believe that, I mean, we've seen a number of different running backs. We've seen the Jermichael Hasty's and the Matt Breidas do pretty well in this offense. But Christian McCaffrey is Christian McCaffrey. And I really think, we thought this a couple years ago when, the injury bug's biting. He's a running back. He's done. And then we saw what he did last year. I'm not saying last year is the blueprint for how every year will be going forward, but I don't think he's done yet. I don't think, an injury is going to just, take out every single one of his seasons for the next couple of years. And I'm not sure in terms of cost. It probably depends on your league and what you need. But I do think that you could get him at a value, and that's probably the one I would be most going after because that would be, I think, the least desirable for most people to do.
Yeah. Let me ask, I'll keep it to you, Chu, on this question and then go to Jerry on a similar question. I know Jerry loves the trade ones, but one of my friends just this week, he's a contending team at Dynasty, completed a trade where he sent his own first, so presumably late, and Ladd McConkey for CMC. What do you think about that, Chu?
100%. That's, I'm not a huge believer in Ladd. Honestly, going into the season, I was more on Josh Palmer, not DJ Chark, never DJ Chark. But I mean, CMC is a game changer. I mean, just trying to think of best case scenario. What do we think Lad McConkey becomes? Like you're saying, if he's a contender, even if it kind of falls apart, likely still in the playoffs, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So
Bye-week favorite.
So, I mean, a middle of the road first, so at best. And, with those sorts of ones, those are the players that it's the embarrassment of riches because they can year in and year out trade that first and take advantage of a team that's going to give up a cornerstone player. Again, he's an older running back. I understand that. But this guy likely has a number of CMC light players at different positions. And now he also has CMC. So that's a tremendous trade, 100%.
Yeah, I'll have to pass this on. Well, hopefully you're watching, Matt. But Jerry, let's go to one. We talked about him a little bit earlier. I guess both the redraft, and then Dynasty, you could approach both of them if you want. Alvin Kamara or CMC, straight up.
Well, for redraft, I probably want Alvin Kamara. You're getting more games out of him. Obviously, the offense is going to be up and down it could be up and down for both teams, but I think with the Saints, it's really going to go through two guys. It's going to go through Kamara and it's going to go through Olave. And Hill's banged up a little bit too, I believe. I don't know if he's missing any time, but even his couple touches, if he's out of the lineup, those touches are just going to go to Kamara. So it's like another 3 or 4 touches that Kamara might get. So for redraft, definitely would want Kamara. For Dynasty, I would lean CMC. I know the name might be a little bit harder to get. I'd prefer to already have CMC and try to go out and shop for Jordan Mason, but just to have that cuff there. But definitely would want CMC because I don't know how old CMC is. I know Kamara's 29 and
CMC's, I believe he just turned 28.
Yeah.
But CMC's contract is he just
got extended. Yeah, it's all is it for Kamara. It's this is last year.
And I mean they're tied to him for a few years. They definitely have some contract things to figure out next year, especially with re-upping Ayuk, and they got Purdy coming up and Bosa and all that stuff. So, but I think it's basically going to go whatever they got to do, whatever moves they got to make. At the end of the day, it's going to go through CMC when he's on the field.
Yeah. So if you're out there contending or, started 2-0, you have some lower drafted guys that have gone off, explore making that move for CMC because, all the prizes are handed out only in week 17. And that's when you want to have this difference maker on your team. But a lot of injuries so far in the NFL affecting fantasy football, like stars, definitely a lot of players on the downtrend. Moving forward to another one affected indirectly by injury, and this was a Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, really a horrific one. Prayers out to him and his family. Does sound like he does not plan to retire. They put him on IR to give him the requisite time to go meet all the neurologists. Hopefully he gets back as soon as possible and is right to play. But Jerry, talk me through the Dolphins skill players. Like, where are we ranking Devon Achane? Really, I can't believe I didn't put him on 3 up to start this segment. But Devon Achane, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle moving forward. Where are you kind of ranking them for rest of season?
Waddle's really the tricky one. I think Achane, if he's healthy and if he's playing, I think he's in the lineup with Mostert, without Mostert, if it's just Achane and Wright or Achane and Jeff Wilson or the 3 of them are healthy. Achane, I think, has to be in your lineup. He might give you an RB2 week. He might give you an RB1 week like he did this past week on Thursday night. He might give you a flex week, but I don't think you can take him out. He's just too explosive. He's going to be nice out of the backfield as far as catching the ball. We've seen that he could run between the tackles, run outside. So definitely keep him. Hill, I was just looking up. I didn't look up what Waddle did in that playoff game, but Hill, even in that playoff game where Skyler started, he still had 7 catches for 64 yards. So that's 13 points in a full PPR. Definitely, it's not going to be as pretty as if Tua was back there, but it's hard to bench him. And really, looking at name value, if you're looking at player X or Hill, it's hard to go with the one that's not named Hill. But you're going to have to try to play the matchups more than just throwing them out there versus if Tua was in the lineup. And then Waddle's a tricky one. It's hard with him. Jonnu Smith, I think, is the one that really gets a huge boost. He's the one. Skyler was targeting him quite a bit in that Thursday game. I think most of his yardage and catches came after Tua. He had a big catch while Tua was in there, but everything else came when Tua was out. So I think John is going to be more of a consistent tight end, somebody that if he's on waivers, go grab him, or you could start to play him more over those guys that maybe you had high hopes for starting the season and they just haven't done anything yet, like a sneaky Hayden Hurst or something like that. Throw John in instead. But Waddle I think is going to be more of a matchup thing. I think that if he's going up against the bottom 15 pass defense, then throw him in there. But there's only so much Skylar Thompson targets that are going to be available, so it's hard.
I mean, let's run through like a few I mean, generally I agree with the A-Chain must start like on what he's proven and the usage. Tyreek Hill, you almost can't not start him because he can break off that play. Waddle can do that too, but let me go. Chu, what do you think about Jameson Williams or Jalen Waddle? Let's say for week 3, for example.
I'm still going JMO. I think he's catching on. He's living up to his role, and his role not only being a couple of deep targets here and there. His target volume is pretty solid at this point, and I think he's finally coming into his own in this Detroit offense that they've been yearning for a partner in crime alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown. Especially, I think Amon-Ra, as far as I know, he's going to go. I know we're a couple of days away from that happening, but I mean, certainly if JMO even gets an even more elevated target share this upcoming week, I trust that versus Skylar Thompson being okay, but I think it's Tyreek Hill and Devon A-Chan. Other than that, I don't trust much anybody else outside of that.
Yeah, I think I agree there. Jerry, I can't lie. I'm like going down a roster where I have Waddle and making these decisions. But Jerry, would you rather start Jalen Waddle or Rashid Shaheed at this point?
Oh, that's a tough one.
This is a
do
real
the right thing. Do the right
that's
thing.
one of those ones where you got to look at the matchup. Off the top of my head, I don't know who plays who this week, so I don't want
Dolphins versus Jaguars and Saints versus.
No, Bills versus Jags. I know it's not Dolphins versus Jags. It's Bills versus Jags this week, so it's I don't want to kill any time.
Dolphins, yeah. Dolphins Seahawks. I can't remember Saints, but yeah, straight.
This is definitely one of those matchup.
Saints Eagles, yeah.
Saints Eagles.
Saints Eagles. And
that's so tasty though.
yeah, that one I might lean Shaheed then because it's a weaker, not a weaker defense, but like I know a lot of Eagles fans and they're really not happy with the Eagles defense or Sirianni at all. So I might lean Shaheed in that one. He's had a long banger touchdown. It's a boomer bust. I think you're going to get more like PPR potential from Waddle. But I mean, you're looking at like 5 catches for 60, 70 yards, which is good, but you're getting that boom touchdown potential from Shaheed on one long play could be 12 points. So I might lean Shaheed, but keep in mind that there is risk there. I think Olave starts to get more involved too.
Yeah, I mean, tough for Jalen Waddle, tough for the Dolphins skill players, definitely trending down. Let's finish this one quickly, and there are a couple of veteran wide receivers that really have a tough start to the season, thinking of Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson. For multiple reasons for each, I can see paths to upside. This one is really just baffling me, and that's Christian Kirk. He's only had 29 receiving yards across 2 games with a catch in each game. I mean, just a baffling stat line of 1 catch on 3 targets and -1 receiving yards in week 2. Trevor Lawrence, the offenses look very inconsistent. I mean, almost from half to half, like generally starts pretty decent and ends up really bad. But even play to play, the consistency is just not there from Trevor Lawrence. I just don't see where the situation like gets better a little bit more. I mean, 80% of the routes out of the slot for Christian Kirk, which is where he's done his best work in the past. But he's also, I drafted him a little bit higher, assuming that he would kind of be the second wide receiver, even in 2 wide receiver sets, just based on pedigree, connection to Trevor Lawrence. I mean, mainly those reasons. But Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr., one raw, one never really proved too much. It's just like not a lot of like arrows pointing up. Jerry, just Christian Kirk, are you kind of writing him off already? Could it be a buy low, or just where are you projecting him rest of the season?
I think it's a buy low. I think he's a mid range wide receiver too. Brian Thomas is definitely really impressed. I think he's come along a little faster than what I think everybody thought he was going to come along. Because going into the season, I thought Christian Kirk was going to be the bona fide one, which might not be a not overall, but like might not be a wide receiver one in the fantasy world, but like at least like a high upside wide receiver two. But it seems like Brian Thomas is taking a lot of that, and Gabe Davis was really never going to be that guy. I would still like it's another one where I'd consider the matchup. Kirk, I mean, he definitely has the leading the team in targets potential. But with Thomas there and this is he had that one catch for what was it -3 yards even without Ingram in the lineup. Like that's
Right.
definitely that's a buzzkill right there. But I'd still hold on. Hopefully he doesn't do anything this week, but overall, I think he's still a hold for now. I'd try to buy low if you can too, which I think you can.
I definitely think you can, especially. I mean, the stat line is just like so horrendous for Christian Kirk, but trending down alongside that kind of group of veteran wide receivers that seem to have just been supplanted by a lot of these guys drafted way after them. That was 3 up, 3 down. I'm still. This to you guys. I'm still getting the hang of the timing and stuff, but I think great segment. And let me pass it right on to you, Chu.
I appreciate it. And so we're going streaming through the quad to the gymnasium. This is heading into week 3. We're looking at some players to stream. As Rahul mentioned in the last section, plenty of injuries mounting to a number of players, a number of superstars. So we're looking, is it going to be their replacements? Do we look for other teams in depth there? Plenty of options, or maybe a lot of the time it doesn't feel like there are any. But don't worry, I am here to right the ship for you. Or if I'm wrong, then just pretend that I didn't say anything. So starting with the quarterback position, and we're looking at outside the top 20 for Fantasy Pros PPR rankings for week 3. So this might be a bit of a homer pick for me, but when you get outside the top 20 for quarterback, it gets interesting. My streamer is Andy Dalton, and this might be a little bit of wish casting, but so they will be playing in Las Vegas. This is Vegas's home opener. So realistically, this could be a bloodbath, but I think one thing that we noticed last season, and we see it every season whenever there's a big shakeup, whether it be with the starting quarterback, whether it be with the coaching staff, again, as we saw in Vegas last year, when there's a shakeup like that, it's kind of a team defining moment, the next game that they play. And I do think that Andy Dalton, again, a steady veteran, played in a number of offenses, both as the known starter and as the backup filling in. I trust him. I trust him to have a stable game from a fantasy perspective, that 12 to 14 fantasy point range, which for the sake of plugging in a quarterback, God forbid if you are in need of someone as far down as Andy Dalton, it's serviceable. For Las Vegas, of the 2 teams they've played thus far, week 1, it was the Chargers, and in week 2, it was the Ravens. And just for starters, so the PFF rankings for the offensive lines. So in week 1, the Chargers, who they played, currently they have like the 11th ranked O-line, and Baltimore, complete Swiss cheese, 24th ranked O-line. Carolina stepping in or stepping out of week 2 with the 12th best O-line, headed by Robert Hunt. Offensive line does look tremendously better. The weapons are better. We just haven't really got to see that yet too much. I'm excited to see what Dalton can do to help stabilize this offense. Canales has already said he wants to establish a run. It's really hard to establish a run when you have a quarterback that has just zero confidence and is just spraying and praying. But for me, I trust that. But Rahul, let me know. Would you rather have Will Levis versus the Packers or Andy Dalton versus the Raiders?
Man, that Jerry with a great comment in our chat about Andy Dalton should actually be able to see over the O-line too. That's a big plus. It's almost like the devil you don't know in that particular comparison. I'll go Andy Dalton over Will Levis, and it's you almost have to decide, like it could be like a matchup to matchup thing. Dalton, I think, like you said, will get you 12. Let's say what 202 is like 16 points, right? in most formats. Throw an interception in there, 14 points. You're kind of projecting that. If you're looking for a QB, but you're kind of set in your individual matchups in the other positions, yeah, toss me that Dalton. He'll do the job that he needs to do. I mean, could Will Levis do the job you need him to do? I don't think so at all. So I'll go Dalton there. But I am really excited about this matchup too. I think as you kept talking about it, I grew to like it more. But we have been big fans of Dave Canales. We are big fans of Deontay Johnson. We believe in the explosiveness of Xavier Legette. There still is something here. The O-line stats are actually quite shocking for me, who hasn't dug too much into them, to hear. So I do like that start if you're really in desperate straits at the QB position.
Yeah, and like you said, if you're picking between Dalton and Levis at this point, it likely feels like a lost season for you. But I don't think that Andy Dalton is going to have a scramble to the left, do like a front flip fumble, and then walk to the sideline, and his coach just ask him, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah.
So I do trust that won't happen with Andy Dalton. Not to say he won't throw a couple of picks, but we'll see. So jumping over to the running back position, this is outside of the top 30 for Fantasy Pros rankings for week 3. And this one was a bit tricky. I had a couple of people I was thinking of, and this is a player who I was honestly not tremendously high of coming out of college, but I mean, he has a stranglehold on the RB2 position for his team, and he is going up against a decently tough defense, but I think the way that they're going to be able to win would be more on the ground versus through the air, and that is Braylon Allen. He is ranked the 47th running back for week 3, and they are going up against the Patriots. The Jets, I mean, they retooled that offensive line, so they do have a top 10 offensive line, almost top 5. I think it was ranked 6th or 7th. Again, Aaron Rodgers made it through 5 snaps. He has not torn his Achilles yet, so there's a bit of a balance there with the passing offense and the rushing attack. Breece Hall is still there. He's still healthy. I by no means am saying that Braylon Allen is going to take any substantial rushing or receiving attempts from him. But I think one thing that is a bit encouraging is through camp, it seemed pretty clear that Braylon Allen was the number 2. But going into the season, the first week, 2 touches on 18% snap share, and I don't think this is something that's going to be repeatable. But in week 2, 9 touches on 35% snap share, 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 1 in the air. Again, I don't think that's going to happen again. That's not the reason I'm picking him to have another, double-digit fantasy finish in week 3. But I do think that you're seeing a growth in his role. And in terms of when you think about both of those touchdowns, he doesn't have any touches inside the 10, but I believe the other 2 were inside the 20. So I think when you consider them wanting to spell Breece Hall, again, last season, the Breece Hall getting tremendous volume, which was probably a little bit concerning for some people, knowing he was coming off of that knee injury, but he performed admirably, tremendously well. But I would imagine the Jets would have more comfort in, you have Aaron Rodgers back, you have Garrett Wilson, you have a number of pass catchers around there. And you also have, it's Breece Hall and Braylon Allen in the backfield, and there's not really even anyone threatening Braylon Allen for touches behind him. So I have comfort that Braylon Allen is going to probably float around that 25%, 30% snap share. And you're really just hoping for vulturing a touchdown. Again, a lot of the time when you're getting to streamers at the running back position, really any of the skill positions, especially tight end as well, you're looking for who does have that opportunity for a touchdown, whether it's a goal line vulture, whether it's a big play ability. And I do think it's definitely in the cards that Braylon Allen could finish with a touchdown against New England. Jerry, if you had to pick between Braylon Allen going against the Patriots and Samaje Perine going against the Falcons, who would you pick?
I'd probably lean Perine, and I love Braylon Allen. He was my RB1 coming out. I'm not happy with where he went for 2 reasons, but Perine, I think, he's definitely got some opportunity to kind of take over that role. Everybody's jumping on Carson Steele. Kareem Hunt was basically free because he wasn't assigned to a team, so people didn't have to wait for the waiver process. So a lot of people picked him up, but he's not going to play this week. But I think Perine is going to end up leading that backfield, at least because we're talking about streamers too. So for the most part, we're looking at week 3. I think P-Ryan's going to be the lead dog for week 3. Maybe Carson Steele steals a goal line touchdown. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But yeah, I'm going to go with P-Ryan for the volume.
That's fair. And that is very interesting looking at that backfield. I mean, I know CEH is on the IR. I guess he'd be eligible week 5, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Pacheco, of course, is out. As we know, he had surgery on the ankle. Bringing in Kareem Hunt. So very interesting, just thinking of what they've been able to do over the years of which running back steps up, even before Pacheco, when it was looking at McKinnon and how he had his late season into the playoffs heroics. So curious to see how that's going to be divvied up there for them in Kansas City. Jumping over to the wide receivers outside of the top 40 rankings. And I'm going with Jalen Naylor, Minnesota Vikings wide receiver. They're going against the Texans. The defense is no slouch by any means, but a bit more friendly to the wide receivers than the running backs. And especially when you look at what the Vikings wide receiver room looks like at the moment, Jalen Naylor was already getting some opportunity with Jordan Addison being injured. And then last week in week 2, Justin Jefferson having an injury as well. For this week, I think as of today, the most recent practice, did not practice for Jordan Addison and limited practice for Justin Jefferson. My hunch is Justin Jefferson is going to be playing. Jordan Addison, I'm not sure. I'm assuming he won't be. And if that is the case, looking at week 1, 47% snap share, and then jumped to 93% snap share in week 2 for Naylor. There's a lot of offseason talk, a lot of coach speak, take it or leave it if you will, but a lot of, coaches and everything had a lot of good words to say about Naylor, and I think that's kind of coming to fruition, partially because of injury, but he was already getting some involvement. It's just really being elevated with the injuries. He did turn the 5 of those targets in the 2 weeks into 2 touchdowns. Again, not a sustainable thing. Very much understand that, but I think with what he does well, working on the outside with speed, that is something that he could very reasonably do. And again, against Houston, they do have some good DBs, but when you look at how the players have performed for fantasy thus far, just through 2 weeks, more likely that Sammy Ballgame is going to be able to get Naylor a touchdown than it is that rushing attack in Minnesota going to be popping off against the Texans. Rahul, looking at a comparison, so would you pick Naylor against the Texans or Wan'Dale Robinson against the Browns?
I think if Jordan Addison is out, and I assume Justin Jefferson will play, like you said, but assuming Jordan Addison is out, I would take Jalen Naylor there over Wan'Dale. And Wan'Dale does have the negative matchup against the Browns. Like you laid out, it's not necessarily a great matchup against a poor defense or a poor secondary, but I do like the potential game script we could get in this one. I anticipate Houston going up and the Vikings having to play catch up a bit, which they haven't done yet. They've only led so far in the NFL, which is not what we expected of the 2-0 Minnesota Vikings. This is just a great offense to target under Kevin O'Connell with the scheme. And they're currently 3rd in the NFL in pass rate over expected. So especially in that situation where they're going to have to drop back and catch up, I could see Jalen Naylor getting a lot of those looks. Justin Jefferson will eat as he does. He'll get peppered with targets, but he'll also naturally attract the attention of players like, Derek Stingley. And I'm going to stop myself there before I say someone who doesn't play anywhere near the wide receivers. But Jalen Naylor opposite Justin Jefferson could get those looks, could get that touchdown. So I really like that call there too.
Yeah, I think the big thing that'll be interesting, again, this is beyond week 3, assuming Addison's out. Once he does come back, I'm very curious to see how this shakes out. Again, I know there's the draft capital, the pedigree. I'm not saying that Naylor is a better player than Addison, but just very curious how Addison's injury and maybe slower start is going to impact how the rest of the season goes. And again, the coaches, from everything they've said, they do like Naylor, so at least keep him involved in some capacity. Last one, got the tight ends. So this is outside of the top 20. And as I've learned doing this the last couple of times, tight ends are slim pickings when you get outside the top 20. Talk about touchdown upside, and there's tremendous irony in me saying touchdown upside because this guy has not scored a touchdown this season yet, but I feel like it's the tides are going to change for him. Cade Otton, he is ranked the tight end 23, and he's going up against the Denver Broncos in week 3. Good matchup versus tight ends, and I do believe that the wide receivers in Tampa Bay is Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I do think they're still going to do plenty fine, but it is going to be a tough matchup for them going against the Denver Broncos and their DBs. But how they could possibly win would certainly be getting Otton involved a little bit more. He had 2 targets in each of the first 2 games, but just 1 catch, a measly, I think, 6 or 8 yards. So again, he's never been tremendously involved on a week-to-week basis, at least through the air, but he has had a tremendous snap share. He had it last season, and this season at 86% snap share in week 1 and 100% snap share in week 2. So again, I know it can be kind of hit or miss. It is the tight end position, but at a minimum, you want someone who's going to be on the field. Yes, you also want someone who's going to be running a tremendous number of routes. But I think in terms of game planning, I think that his involvement is going to you do hope for a red zone opportunity for him. You do have a red zone monster in Mike Evans. You do have a tremendous big do-it-all back in Rachaad White. But I do think there's a good opportunity and matchup for him going against the Broncos. And let's see, Jerry, going for just 2 stud tight ends here. Would you rather Cade Otton against the Broncos, or would you rather Tyler Conklin against the Patriots?
I got to go Cade Otton. I do like him. Rahul said it in the little chat. Got to go Cade Otton. I think his touchdown time is coming. Did you know that he has 100% of the yards against the Washington Commanders for tight ends? His whole 1 catch for 5 yards is all that the tight ends have caught against the Commanders.
Man.
But no, yeah, he should become. I mean, he's just like 98% of the tight ends. They're all just plug and play and hope for the best. And if you get 5 receptions for 50 yards, that's a good game, and then a touchdown's a bonus. Rachaad White is also a little banged up. I know he left the game and he's been dealing with some injury throughout practice this week. So we'll see. Like if he's out, obviously 2 different positions, but if he's out, I think that's just going to open up the passing game a little bit more, because then you're relying on a rookie in the backfield. And I mean, we've seen Baker play. He could sling it. He hit Chris Godwin for a bunch of yards this past week. He hit Mike Evans for a couple of touchdowns week 1, and Otton's time is coming. Just gotta, if you don't have your Kittles and you don't have your Kelce's, which I mean, even Kelce is not doing too well this year either. But if you don't have those guys and you're sitting looking at Cade Otton on your bench or they're on waivers, just throw them in there and just hope for the best.
Throw them in there and hope for the best. That is the tagline for the streamers this week. And if it blows up in your face, I didn't say a word. But Jerry, talk about some bets here.
We do have a chat question first. I have a trade in Dynasty. Get Tyreek, give Shaheed, and a 26 first. Worried about Hill's age. Obviously, that is a little bit of a factor as far as like short-term Dynasty. As far as this year goes, would be worried about the quarterback as well. Rahul, you love trades. What do you think about this one?
I do love trades, and I think I do love this one. I'd still send that. This is assuming it's a team that's built to compete to win the title this year. There's a risk in a 26 first where you don't know your team as well. But I think at this price point, yeah, give me Tyreek Hill. Tua has come out and said he's not going to retire. So I expect him to return this season, whether that's a matter of the 4 weeks minimum IR or whether that's a matter of months. I expect him to come back this season. And for that price to have Tyreek Hill, immediately goes back to top 3 wide receiver in week-on-week basis. Like, I would pay that easily to get that piece on my team.
All right. So now I'm going to talk about some bets. Recap what we did last week. We did go 3 for 3. We did not 3 for 3. We went 3 and 3 on our bets. And we also that underdog one that I had. I don't have the screenshot anymore, but if I do remember correctly, we did hit it. Because there was a special on CeeDee Lamb. There was over Amon-Ra receptions, and it was under for Will Levis. Was it Will Levis? Under Will Levis passing attempts. So I'm like 95% sure that all 3 of those things hit. Unfortunately, I can't really look at it because I didn't play it personally, and I don't have the screenshot anymore. So we'll say that hit. As far as the bets go from last week, Bucks at Lions did not, or the Bucks at Lions over 51 did not hit. The Rams money line, don't even talk to me about it. And Purdy 2 touchdown passes, that did not hit. But the 3 that we did hit was Commanders -1.5. They beat the Giants. They didn't smoke them. Amon-Ra St. Brown over 78.5. That got smoked. He did that. And a Nico anytime touchdown. Because of the Nico touchdown, we actually are plus money because that was a plus money play. So overall, we're up about 7 footballs, which 7 footballs is better than being down 120 footballs. So that was last week's recap. As far as this week's goes, I am going a little bit riskier on some, but they're all plays that I absolutely love. I'll be playing them individually myself. I don't like to parlay, so definitely parlay at your own risk. But as far as like individual plays go, first one I'm going with the Chargers money line. That's just straight up. They're on the road. They're in Pittsburgh, going up against the Steelers. That is for just the money line. It's even money plus 100. So 20 footballs gives you another 20 footballs. And Chargers have, part of it's because of their schedule, but Chargers have allowed the least amount of points this year. The Steelers are a team that is really, they're not good at scoring points. Going into Pittsburgh is tough, of course, but I think that Harbaugh's building a good team. The defense, I think we're finally seeing the defense that we've wanted from the Chargers the past few years, and why I've taken them in redrafts at the end of my draft, and then I'm dropping them week 2 because they haven't really lived up to it and start streaming. But I think we're finally seeing the Chargers defense that we thought we would be getting, and the run game is excellent. J.K. Dobbins just looks like a whole new man there. I think it's going to be close. It's going to be one of those boring, low-scoring games. It looks like Quentin Johnson knows how to catch a football, and he had two catches for touch, or he had 2 catches, but he had 2 touchdowns last week. I think the Chargers pull this one off in Pittsburgh going into that hostile environment. So if that hits, you double up there. I'm taking the Texans. The current line is -1.5. I am going to alt line it to -3.5. That's another team that's on the road. They are in Minnesota. That is Minnesota, not as hostile as Pittsburgh is. Minnesota they look really good this year. They're 2-0. Sam Darnold is playing out of his mind. Justin Jefferson, that 97-yard touchdown reception last week, and the defense is, like, I personally am not a fan of the Minnesota defense, but they're looking good. But I think that the Texans, they go in there. We haven't seen I don't think we've seen the best Texans team yet. They went up against 2 of the tougher defenses to start the year. Indy kind of in the middle, and then last week was they went up against Chicago on Sunday night, which is, they're surprisingly really good as far as defense goes. But I think that we're going to get I think we're going to get some offensive explosion in this game from Houston. Mixon is a little banged up. Nico is a little banged up, but I think that Mixon might be a little bit of a loss, but Nico going down, like, they brought in so many weapons in this offense, and the offensive line is really good, that I think that, like, they can miss a guy here and there and still have a really strong offense. I'm sorry I didn't go to any of you guys for either of these games, but Chu, I'll go to you for the first one. What do you think about the Chargers against the Steelers?
100%. I really like what Harbaugh's doing there in LA. I think that throughout the season, this team is going to turn into exactly what he wants it to. And I think it's I expected it to be a bit rockier to start the season. And I'm sure there's plenty of stuff to smooth out there, but it's a ground and pound game. I think they're getting what they can out of those receivers. I know it's a weird mix of tight ends there, but at least from the standpoint of, like you said, the defense, I think is turning into what a lot of people have hoped it could have become the last couple of years. And I think this feels like a pretty safe play, in my opinion. I can understand the appeal of the Steelers in the last couple of games, but I do think that the Chargers are the pick on that one.
And Rahul, what do you think about the Texans going up against the Vikings? Now, the original line is -1.5. I got it to just over a field goal. So unfortunately, if with my alt line, if they don't win by more than a field goal, then I would lose. But what do you think about? You could even go as low as -1.5 because that's -110 if you go that route.
I think I would go with the definitely would go with the normal line, and even the alt line. I still do like that. I think Texans are just. Did you guys hear me there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But I think Texans are just going to be one of the best teams in the NFL, and we know all about the offense, especially as we've been analyzing it from a fantasy point of view. But that defense quietly has a lot of extremely strong players all around the field. In Minnesota, I mean, as we said earlier, surprise 2-0. It's a lot down to as well. What is a great defense coached by Brian Flores, but I just have a lot of faith in the Texans, and even on the road, 3.5. I do like that bet there, Jerry.
Yeah, all four of these teams actually are 2-0. So two of these teams are getting their first losses, whether the spread's hit or not. That's another story. But two of these teams are getting their first losses of the season this year. The other game that I have is the Seahawks regular line. It's -4.5 against Miami. They kind of, I don't want to say they struggled with New England, but obviously they went to overtime with New England, which I don't think a lot of people really expected. New England is definitely surprising people so far out of the gate these past two games. But I think that going into, actually I don't even know if it's going into Miami. I think it's in Seattle. But Miami coming across the country, going to Seattle, losing their quarterback, and now question marks about. I think Mostert and A-Chain are both going to be playing this week, and that's pretty much what they're going to lean on. But Seattle's defense is just they're tough, they're strong. Seattle was one of those defenses that you drafted in redraft because of their first two opponents, and now with Skylar Thompson in there, you could just play him again. So you kind of got a bonus week out of that streamer defense from Seattle, but -4.5. So I think that they win by more than a touchdown. I think it's going to be -6.5. You could take if you wanted to. 4.5 is the original line. I really don't see Miami. Obviously, yeah, Tua isn't there. They still have the offensive playmakers. It's going to be tough to get them the ball. Any thoughts on that one, Chu?
Seattle, an incredibly imposing defense, like you said. I mean, just an embarrassment of riches that someone gets to play the Seattle defense for a third straight week. And it really, on the flip side, looking at Miami's defense, not as good as I think a lot of people were hoping thus far. And Seattle's offense, I mean, it's a new coaching staff and everything, but I trust in Geno Smith. I know Sam Howell will eventually take his job probably next year. But I mean, Geno Smith he's steady. He can work the deep ball. Jackson Smith-Njigba is getting more involved, as many dynasty managers are probably appreciating at this point. DK Metcalf is an absolute monster of a human being, as we all knew, despite the fact that he only eats Skittles or some nonsense like that. So, yeah, 100% Seattle.
Yeah, there's weapons galore. I don't know if Kenny Walker's going to play, but Charbonnet didn't look too bad. They had a couple of receivers go over 120 last game, and just overall, I think it's going to be pretty nasty for them. As far as the three props that I got, two of these I like a lot. The other one I'm just kind of throwing in there. It's a little riskier than ever, but so I'll start with the safer ones. I got Chris Godwin over 60.5 yards receiving. Mike Evans actually has the same line for the same odds too. I'm almost positive it's going to be Patrick Surtain on Mike Evans. But if you feel it's going to be the other way around, you could take the Mike Evans line, and if he's going to be covering because Chris Godwin is coming off of that big game that he just had. 60.5 receiving yards is, I mean, that's like 4 or 5 catches for Chris Godwin. I think that I think both of those numbers smash. Really not much else to say about it. Baker likes to look his way. I think Mike Evans could have that big play, could get it in two catches if he wanted to go that way. But I think that he's going to look more Godwin's way, trying to keep the ball away from Surtain. And we've seen Godwin has had some of the best hands since he's came into the league. And it's really like if you're coming off of what do you have 120 something yards last game, you're not going to go away from that. You like that one, Rahul?
Yeah, I really do like that one for all the reasons you said. And and just to finally add, like Godwin, a lot of his success this year, I think, has been linked to them putting him back in the slot, which they kind of moved away from a little bit in previous years. And that not only we've seen the big play in two back-to-back weeks, but he also gets so many of those like easy button targets that are just going to rack up those yards, and he is able to break away that big one at any time, along with Baker Mayfield in this offense. My one concern is it might turn into the kind of game where the Bucs don't really need to throw the ball to really pound, to win the game. They face one of the worst, I think one of the easiest defenses to play against in the Commanders, and then kind of more of a back and forth game against the Lions. So that's my one concern, but I do really like this line, Jerry. I do think I would take the over there with you.
And that's minus 115. As long as the next one, or along with the next one, that's minus 115. That I also like is Kyle Pitts over 39.5 receiving yards. They are playing at home against the Chiefs on Sunday night. Coming off another primetime game that they just had this past Sunday night. The numbers are a little skewed, but at the same time, they're really not, because that's the way that they went. The Chiefs are the worst team in the league at preventing the tight end. And obviously they played Isaiah Likely week 1. And then in week 2, they had the Bengals, who seemed to have just thrown to like all 3 of their tight ends just throughout the game. So like a lot of they got like 25 receptions for like 274 yards against the tight end. And now Kyle Pitts comes in. It's a home game for Atlanta Sunday night. Their Chick-fil-A in the stadium is not going to be open, of course. But if you know that you could throw to the tight end against Kansas City, this is going to be the most athletic tight end that they've seen so far. Isaiah Likely also was up there. London just had his game last week along with Darnell Mooney. I think this is going to be another Pitts game. I think that they're going to just throw short over the middle. You got Chris Jones coming after you. You're still kind of recovering from that Achilles and Kirk Cousins, so you want to try to get the ball out quick. So it's going to be a lot of Bijan, and it's going to be a lot of Kyle Pitts. And Kyle Pitts for 40 yards. I mean, I think that's cake. I think that's easy. Chu, what do you think?
This one makes me so nervous. I was able to on this past Monday, I won a parlay which included the under on Kyle Pitts 5.5 targets, and I was watching the first half and I was like, I think I could just go to sleep. But that's on the target side. Of course, I know yardage wise, I think it was 26 yards the first week and then 20 yards in second. But like you're saying, a lot of the tight end stuff, getting that tremendous of a matchup. This is the opportunity to take that line and him get easy into the 40s, if not 50s. Because again, an uber athletic tight end, this is the chance for him to have even not one catch go for that long, but one catch eat up a half, if not more, of the yardage that you ultimately end up needing to win this one. So makes me nervous, but this one is validated tremendously by the matchup. And that's a lot of, I'd go by matchup regardless, but tight end specifically, matchup is a lean pretty heavy for that.
Yeah, I might even sprinkle an anytime touchdown for him too, because I think that he scored in week 1, wasn't really involved a lot in week 2. It was a lot of Mooney in London and Bijan, but you're going to have those weeks where it's going to be this guy and not this guy, and I think this is going to be this guy. And then the final play that I like, this is the riskiest one of all of them, but we're getting into the area. We're going into week 3 and week 4, and I want to create a list too. But we're gonna start seeing guys that haven't scored yet just start to score. Now this one is a little riskier because he's a rookie, but even guys that have been in the league for a while and that are used to getting 8 to 10 touchdowns a year, start throwing a couple units at them to get an anytime touchdown, because eventually that touchdown is going to come. Go for a Dalton Kincaid, go for an Amon-Ra St. Brown, those guys that George Pickens even. I mean, he hasn't scored yet. He's probably going to end up with 10 at the end of the year. So throw a little bit at him to get a touchdown. But this one, coming off of a 1-target game, I'm going with Keon Coleman on Monday night, under the lights, at home. I think that, it's really hard to pick a guy from Buffalo that's going to be the leading receiver. It could be Shakir, Kincaid really hasn't been involved too much. I know a lot of fantasy managers are really a little upset there, but his time is coming as well. I could have easily gone with him as well too, but I think that Keon Coleman, especially coming off just that one target game, I think he was shadowed by Ramsey pretty much all game last Thursday, and which is crazy because Ramsey doesn't really shadow the wide receiver. He just kind of stays on one side. So it seems like every single formation, they just kind of line Keon up on Ramsey's side to open up everybody else. Jaguars don't have a Jalen Ramsey. They did, but they don't have a Jalen Ramsey anymore. And so I think that you're going to see a much better game. He's had some good catches so far in his short career. Obviously, not this past week, but in week 1, he's had a couple of catches, sideline catches, and stuff like that. I think they try to get him involved and get him into the end zone. Of course, an anytime touchdown is risky. You could have the best odds at getting an anytime touchdown and like a Derrick Henry, and it might not hit. But for Keon Coleman, I believe it was what I have that plus 195. So if that hits, and then like 2 others hit, we're looking at green for this week. But Keon Coleman to get a touchdown Monday night. If you're on DraftKings, which is not a sponsor, but a lot of times they do have no sweats. So throw a no sweat on it and get the money back if it doesn't hit. But Rahul, you like Keon to see some pay dirt this week?
I think I see it through the same Bills tinted glasses that you are, but something about that narrative really does hit it, especially after, I mean, not just the one target, yes, the goose egg that he got. There's kind of some weird clips going of Josh Allen like ignoring like Keon Coleman too. It just seems like a perfect get right kind of situation. And this is the profile that he is. Keon Coleman is an elite ball winner. I know some of the stats didn't really show that in college, but Jordan Travis was just throwing up like hopeless balls kind of. But this is like what in his prospect profile is supposed to be the elite trait, is the ability to win those jump balls. So I could very easily see it. Mac Hollins kind of did that in week 1 for the Bills, caught a touchdown if I believe, but ideally Hollins is really only there for his like run blocking and for the cardio, and Keon Coleman like starts to take those high value touches that profile requires. So I mean, it's really the narrative too that stole me, but yeah, let's go get these footballs, Jerry.
All right, yeah. So that's I mean, I got 3 plus money ones on here. One that's pretty close to even money, and then the other 2 are just your regular minus 115s. So if that Keon Coleman one hits with 20 footballs, you end up with, you gain 39 footballs for a total of 59 footballs on just that one alone. Just to run it down real quick, Chargers money line, Texans minus 3.5 for an alternate spread, Seahawks minus 4.5, Keon Coleman an anytime touchdown, Chris Godwin 60.5 receiving yards, and Kyle Pitts over 39.5 receiving yards. And that is it for You Can Bet On It.
Great. Yeah, good stuff, guys. This has been the Fantasy Assessment. Of course, follow these 2 guys on Twitter. Well, why don't I let them tell you? Chu, tell the people where they can find you.
What Rahul said. Follow me on Twitter at Father Dynasty. Yeah, of course, come here and check us out every week, whether it be live or not, as we take what we can get. But regardless, we're going to bring you the hot, sweet goodness every week on fantasy football.
That's exactly right. We've been living off scraps, but we're here to be full-time players. Jerry, tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me at Jerry Wilkie FM. I will be posting these plays on there. So if it was a lot and don't want to hear me talk, you can just go read it.
Yeah, but we love hearing you talk, especially about trades. My name is Rahul. You can find me on Twitter at SmallTalkFF. We do realize this is Wednesday and not Friday, but I promise the fantasy assessment will be either live or pre-recorded, probably pre-recorded, every Friday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, right here, Going for 2 live.